really give a brutal example to the other criminals that you cannot catch, but you could just, for example, punish every criminal act only in a way that is absolutely equivalent to the harm done, and not something much more, a punishment that is much, much, much worse than the harm done. And you only need relatively few laws for very precise cases, because you know exactly what is harmful or what may be harmful. So you would have less laws, and I think less laws which act more precise and which punish more easily in the sense that the punishments are not as strong and as brutal, could actually mean more freedom. I think that's a hypothesis that can create lots of criticism and create lots of contrary opinions, but I think it's something worth thinking about, especially considering, for example, that the word trust was an earlier Congress motto, and I've always wondered how we can create more trust. Maybe we would just, if in the future we are all victims to the all-seeing eye in a post-private society, that may be something dangerous, that may be something dystopian, but I think one can create ideas and one can brainstorm ideas about how this could also be something utopian. So then now, only a short slide, I want to give some reading recommendations concerning privacy and the division between privacy and public and so on. So I recommend the privacy article in the Stanford Encyclopedia of Philosophy, which is online. That's a very comprehensive and yet very short and a very short but very complete overview about the field of what people are thinking about privacy in law, in philosophy, and so on. Also, something like that is in format of a book is The Value of Privacy, or in German, Der Wert des Privaten by Beate Rösler. I think it appeared in English and as well as in German. And then another interesting example, The Fall of Public Man by Richard Sennett, which provides a very interesting history of the division between private spaces and public spaces and how that interacts with the psychology of humans in societies and so on, for example, from the French Revolution to the Puritanism of the 19th century, to the Neo-Puritanism of the 19th century and so on, and to the omnipresent intimacy, for example, in the media in the 20th century, and he's very critical to this, to a certain powers of intimacy and privacy, and values the potentials of the public space very much. Then a very interesting recent study that I can recommend, Facebook and the Social Dynamics of Privacy, which tries to look into how people are actually, evaluating their privacy and what they actually think, what kind of privacy they have in a social network like, for example, Facebook, and how privacy is broken in these networks, especially because people have false expectations about privacy, and false expectations that are not so much a result of manipulation through Facebook, but through mechanisms, psychological mechanisms of sociality and so on. And that's also online. And also, as I mentioned already, The Transparent Society by David Brin, which really is a very controversial, offers very controversial arguments concerning why transparency could be much more important than privacy, which also somewhat states that privacy is not so much a condition for freedom, but that actually freedom is a condition for the luxury of privacy. So, I turn this thing off now. So, I think we have some minutes left. And I guess there may be some opposition to what I've said, so feel free to.
Well, unsurprisingly, I'm quite a bit irritated about what you've been telling, because it sounds to me like as there is no reasonable way that things could work out the way we would like them to, let's look at a radically opposite direction. And I'm while not really being sure how that might look like, because I'm not convinced at all that, for example, it might be politically easier to convince the police that they let themselves film battering people at a demonstration than it would be, for example, especially in the actual political context, to fight for serious laws that prohibit all the data terrorism that has been going on, with all that data that is traded and lost, with some real touchable consequences for real people. So I don't think that this is neither a timely nor a realistic suggestion. What's your take on that?
First, I agree with the difficulty to make sure the police is victim to the same transparency that the citizen is. That's, of course, I think something one should fight about, and something that one should fight at least as much about as protecting the privacy of the citizen. And then, of course, yeah, the whole thing is speculation and utopianism. It's not that I say, well, I have now found the solution for the problems and just ignore our old fight and just embrace post-privacy openly and just have the old ideas being done with. I just wanted to throw in some ideas about how this could work out in a nice way, so that if we, for example, find out that it becomes more and more difficult to protect freedom on the one front, then maybe we should try to enforce positive developments on the other front. So if it becomes difficult to protect freedom through privacy, then we should also look at maybe it becomes easier and thereby more effective to protect freedom in other ways that are somewhat maybe different than the privacy angle.
Okay. I have a question that's about one. I think we can easily achieve or get more transparency from a democratic government, but how do we get transparency from multinationals or more authoritarian governments?
Yeah, that's basically the same problem. Of course, you may say in a democracy it's easier to enforce transparency than it's concerning entities like corporations or autocracies. In this case, I'd say, well, actually, on the one hand, one can hope that technology creates some new potentials, that, for example, more ubiquitous recording of everything that is available to more and more people, for example, in the form of mobile phone cameras and so on, creates by itself better and better opportunities for transparency, not necessarily in a legal framework, but in a way that it gets published on the web, and once it's on the web, it doesn't get away again. But still, that might be a difficult fight. So to force transparency on those who do not want it. It's hopefully also a difficult fight right now to force transparency on the people who are not in the power above, but the people who are strong as legal entities and as corporations and so on may actually fight even more effectively against becoming transparent than, for example, political movements that try to protect the privacy of individual persons.
One question. I really like the concept of equivalence, suggesting that there is some kind of balance between them watching us and us watching them. But what I missed on that point was the opportunity to have larger access to media, because it's not only to have a look at what, for example, politicians, police forces, etc. are doing and how they are treating us, but it's also a look on the mechanisms of public, of the press, for example, of discourses inside the society, and I miss the equality there. And if I consider the terrorist debate yesterday, is not new. We had this terrorist debate last year here too, and we have here a few thousand people having access to modern media and having more impact there than normal internet users outside this event. And we didn't manage to turn over the discussion about what is terrorism. That was just the, that's still the discourse that politics and mass media are setting, still the agenda. And we have the opportunities to watch how this is done. We have the opportunities to describe how it is done, but there is still no equality because we don't have the reach, and I don't see how we should achieve this reach.
I think we have a case where traditional hierarchies of media are do you hear me? Oh, okay. Where traditional hierarchies of media are changing very much, and as a result of new technologies. And right now you don't have a situation where you are totally satisfied with, because you still have, for example, a very strong mainstream press, and you still have some very important gatekeeper bottlenecks that decide what information reaches many people. But I think technology really develops in a way that makes it more and more difficult to enforce these bottlenecks.
It works now? Okay, thank you. I would just like to offer agreement to you, because I'm Swedish, and since the 60s my social security number is a matter of public record, so nobody's using it as anything secure. I can also walk into any parts of government and ask for their records. I mean, that's by law, and they have to give it to me very readily. So within a few hours they should produce a record I'm asking them for, and this is in law, and this has worked very well. And so we have the transparency both ways. I can go in and see a lot about what the government is doing, and I know when we joined the EU this was a disruptive force, because governments in Europe were sending records to Swedish government, and then media was going in and asking for the records, and then all of a sudden it was public. So I think that what we should do is not say governments are eternally evil. Instead, we should make sure government are benevolent and working for us, and we should have access to what they're doing, and because they have access to what we're doing. So I totally agree with you in your the thing that we need privacy because government is evil, and trying to solve that by increasing the privacy. We should do it the other way around. We should have benevolent government instead.
Yeah, so I think it would be interesting to collect some examples where this transparency thing really works out. So it may work out in your case. Maybe one can also find examples where it collapses disastrously and where it leads to collapse of society. But for example, what David Brin, for example, argues in his book is that it's very difficult to find a society which is open and which through that openness descends into totalitarianism, whereas it's quite easy to in the case that the openness really creates some form of trust and some form of security for freedom through transparency, where it's very difficult, where it's very easy in cases where there is no transparency totally, and there it's possible for example, private institutions to develop that challenge the freedom of the society, and in that case it may very well happen that the society collapses into an autocracy. So it's very interesting maybe to collect examples of states where it works out and of states where it maybe not working out. So we're finished, and thank you everybody, and yeah, have much fun with the next talk.